And without further ado, let me introduce to you our Evan Pugh Professor of Geosciences and Associate of the Earth and Environmental Systems Institute, Dr. Richard Alley. Dr. Alley studies the history of climate, stored in ice cores, possible effects of the ice in Greenland and Antarctica on sea level, and the way glaciers modify the landscape. He is the author of more than 200 refereed papers. He's the author of a book, The 2 Mile Time Machine. He's won something like 7 printed pages of awards here that I won't read out, and he was a co-recipient of the 2007 Nobel Peace Prize on the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So we are very, very proud of Dr. Alley for many reasons, and one of them you saw as you came in, the fact that he's made geology so exciting and set the terms to music. So Dr. Alley, tell us more about yourself and your work.
You're falling apart. Sorry. Good. Good morning. Great to see so many of you out this early in the morning. I'm going to take you on a tour. We'll talk on a couple things that may be just a shade controversial, but I think it's important that we do that. And my dear wife is going to click back there when I say, please click to the next slide, and she will take care of everything. So at any rate, we do have a lot of fun here at Penn State. We have great students. Our best students are better than ever, but I'm not sure if it is clicking yet, but it will be. There we go. So geosciences, we're probably about 5th in the nation. We are a tremendous department. Across the board, if you've seen the ratings that are coming out, Penn State is outstandingly strong. I will tell you, honest, that I believe we give our students things that are available at very few other places. This school is strong, and we're doing great things for them. I'll also tell you, if you happen to be paying tuition, it hurts like all get out. But if you take the number of tuition dollars attached to a Pennsylvania student and you add in what the state gives us, we spend about half as much per year on a student as they do at an Ivy League or at a good liberal arts school. Okay, it's about half. Now, and I do believe that we give them things that they won't get at a good liberal arts school. We're competitive with anybody. Now, if you're going to do competitive with anybody in the world for half the cost, you better believe that there's some efficiencies in the system somewhere. And so I can tell you, we have 800 students in geosciences, 10 this semester. And that's where the efficiency comes in. If we can get a few big classes, we can have lots of little classes, and we can do things with the students, and we can take them to Greenland, and we can have them do original research projects, and we can do things that they might not get anywhere. So if we click to the next one, if we're going to do that to students, if we're going to get 800 in a class, we jolly well better make sure it's worth it for them. And so we've tried this, and we've got a team, and the Dutney Education Institute, and Sridhar, and WPSU, and a bunch of people you'll see named up here. We wrote them a textbook, lots of pictures targeted to this class. They don't pay extra for it. If they've already paid to be here, we give the rest of it to them for free. We've probably given away $1 million worth of textbooks. And that's about the right number, I think. We've got slideshows, we've got videos. They turn on these little whiteboard diagrams, and they can see the key diagrams appear and hear us tell them what they are. We've got streaming lectures that they can go watch. And then we had real fun. Big project, a lot of WPSU. We got a dozen advanced natural science students. WPSU folks, Tom Kiter is over here, came in and taught them how to do filmmaking. And then we took them to the bottom of the Grand Canyon and the top of Mesa Verde, and they made film that we use in the class. And then Tom and Joe won an Emmy by filming the students filming the parks. So we're trying to do stuff that makes this a little more special to them, okay? Then what can we do? If you're going to a campus that doesn't have geology, you can still take geology because we can offer it to you. So we've got people across the Commonwealth. We've had people, you know, I'm in South Africa with the family for a semester. I'm taking your class. So you can get it from pretty much anywhere. We offer fully online. You never have to come in. We offer you can come in and chat with us versions. We offer some honors options. We try to run it during the summer sometimes as well. And what we find feedback-wise is it seems to work. True story. I don't want to brag, but I'm going to. I'm walking in Wednesday morning. I walk by the corner room down there. There's 3 students standing there, and one of them says, "Dr. Alley," he says, "your class is so cool." Okay. So this is great, okay? You can have this too. You can get the address from me, but you don't get the grade, you don't get the credit, but we'll make the stuff available to you. So you can go online and see what students are doing, you can see the videos, you can see all of this stuff. And if you can't see that at the bottom and you can't get it from the Alumni Association, just drop me an email, I'll find it for you. So anyway, we'll make it for you. So I'm gonna tell you some stories. I do not want to make our students look bad. We've got great students, but I want to tell you a little bit of sort of what the world is doing and how it's interacting with our students, because this is interesting and it may matter to you someday. So observation first, we offer the ones you can come into class or the ones you can stay home. The stay home enrollment always fills first. The students vote for the let me do it online and I don't have to come to class. The students that come to class do better and end up happier. Okay? You know this because we're all that way. All right? I come around, and this one bugs me just a little bit, and it's not just our students, be very clear. You know, I'll come over and I'll say, "Hi, how's it going? What's new and exciting?" Nothing. I said, "Come on, there's got to be something new and exciting." Nothing. The only way I can really get them going is, "Did you go to the game Saturday?" "Yes." Okay. You know, and something else which has happened very clearly is that the students are not that impressed anymore with trying to impress me or the other faculty. They want to do something, but they're not sure what it is. Now we click forward. Like I say, this is not our students. This is the world at this point. If you happen to read Dear Abby, it was in the Newspaper Daily Times on the 15th. "I'm a 19-year-old guy, doesn't know what I want to do with my life. I have thought of hundreds of careers and I hate them all." Okay. He was from Arizona. But so at any rate, this is an interesting thing we're dealing with, and this is the real world. Okay. Now, I'll give you some speculations. When I was a student at Ohio State, where I met my dear wife. Okay, so at any rate, I took economics. The economics prof says, okay, there's an opportunity cost. If you do something, you have chosen not to do everything else in the world. And they said this, and they had been saying it for years, but you know, we never quite believed it. I wasn't going to Harvard. We didn't have that kind of money. I grew up in Ohio, and I could just about scrape together enough money to go to Ohio State, and that was it. And there really wasn't much of a choice then. But now there's enough loans, there's enough student aid, that a student who goes to Penn State is not going to Harvard. And they're not going to Ohio State, and they're not going to Arizona. They have made a choice that sort of rules out the rest of the world. And I think this is the first generation in the world that really has believed this, that when they choose to do X, they choose not to do everything else. They apply to 20 schools, and then they're going to choose one of them. And they're throwing away the other 19. And it's overwhelming. If you say, wow, I have just chosen not to do everything in the world, that's a hard thing to put up with. And if the rest of the world is boring, it's a lot easier. And so I truly believe there's a generation here who say, oh, what's new and exciting? Nothing. Because it's a defense mechanism against the fact that it's all there. They got the whole friggin' world on their cell phone. And how can they sit and listen to me when everything else is on their cell phone? And why in heaven's name should they memorize the names of minerals? I don't make them memorize the names of minerals anymore. Why should they memorize the names of minerals when they're all on their cell phone and the cell phone remembers better than they do? And so it's a very interesting problem. They want purpose. They want to know where they're going, but it's so easy to to play a video game on the cell phone, and it's all there, and it's there all the time, and it's there in class, and it's there in the game, and it's there when they're talking to their friends, and it's there when they're walking across campus. It's always there. And most of us are too old to really have that driving us crazy, but it really is there. It's something to think about when you walk home before you get into the game and enjoy it. But, okay, so first editorial interlude. I'm going to give you a couple opinions. I'm going to make them real clear when they're opinions, okay? If you've got an internship, if you got a project, if you got a mission trip, if you got a whatever, if you can get the students involved, we're all better off. Because they really don't want to spend their lives impressing me. I'm just that professor up there. They really want to be out in the real world with you. And if you get them involved, once they say, wow, you're doing things that matter. Teach for America, daggone, that one's a good one, you know? Okay, once they get involved in the things, they want that. That's why Thon is so good. They really want it. They crave that engagement, but it's so easy to plug into your cell phone and not be engaged. So at any rate, there's an editorial for you, okay? And for what it's worth, they do want this. Because they really do. We've got good kids, and don't kid anyone, but it's a little, how do we get there? How do we do what makes a difference? And you see what happens with Thon, because when they know where to make a difference, they do. Okay, so that's an editorial. Now I'm going to back off a little bit and go somewhere else, okay? If you're a student, you'd pull out the cell phone, you get the smartphone going, and there's an ad. And then there's another ad, and then there's another ad, and then there's another ad. And if you ever turned on TV about a month ago, you know that everything was ads. Vote for me, buy me, vote for me. Okay, they drink from a fire hose. There's information coming. In a day, they will see more stuff than our great-grandparents saw in a lifetime. And that's probably about right, okay? And so what they're doing is, you're drinking from a fire hose, you got to do something. So what they're doing is they're going to a few sources. And there's a lot of people trying to sell them things that are making sources that'll tell them what they want to hear. And that's happening for you and me too. So people are sort of going to their own places to get information. And some of that information is coming from people that want to sell them something. And it may be designed to sell them something as opposed to tell them what they really should hear. Okay, so what we're going to do, I walk into a class, and a bunch of the students are going to sit there and say, wow, I'm sleepy. Wow, the game was great. And a few of them are going to say, wow, this is so exciting. I want to spend my life doing this. And a few of them are going to say, you know, he's an evil liar. He's trying to corrupt me. He's going to tell me that the earth is old. He's going to tell me that the dinosaurs are related to the birds. He's going to tell me that the climate is changing and that there might be something you could do about it. And I know that those are lies. And it is true. And when I walk into a classroom, probably 10% of the students believe that I am a liar. And furthermore, I am lying deliberately to mislead them. And that's a little lower than the general population, but if you were to walk across America, some of the things I'm going to tell you today, probably 10% of Americans would say, he is an evil liar. He is trying to get black helicopters to take away my pickup truck. Okay? And I'm not. Be very, very clear on this. But it is something that's happened now with people getting their information in different ways. When you walk into a classroom, there is some differences of opinion which are very strong. And how we deal with this is my challenge as a scientist. Every antibiotic that saved your grandparents is basically worthless against a lot of diseases now because the bugs evolved. And whatever you think about why I'm here, the bugs are evolving. And treating them is done with evolutionary theory as well as with new medicine. And it's a very interesting thing. These things are out there. I can't go in and say, oh, don't worry about what we've learned. I can be very honest. This is science. We're never certain. Students always run up the back of their professors because they always find things we did wrong. So as a scientist, I am never certain. But I got to tell them what we know. And so that's an interesting thing that we deal with, and I want to walk you through one issue here. So we're gonna click on this. I'm gonna start with ice. If you didn't know, we're great on ice, glaciers, ice sheets, and so on. Penn State is a center of this, the history of climate that's written in the ice, how ice makes beautiful landscapes. And the ice is changing, and we observe the ice changing. And so when I explain about the ice changing, I know that some fraction of our students think I'm lying to them. And it is not just our students. I'll tell you in a little bit about that. But let's go see a little bit about ice. Okay, so this is Greenland. I've been to Greenland 9 times now. These cliffs are most of a mile high. This is how glaciers do things. And this is Greenland today. If we click forward, this is also Greenland today. This peak is 7,000 feet high. We're in the ocean, and the water is a mile deep. That thing is 2 miles plus high, and the glaciers did it. Okay, glaciers are wonderful things, so we click to the next one. And here is what they did, only the ice is gone now. Natural climate change, the ice went away and it left Yosemite. Most of the big waterfalls of the world, most of the natural lakes of the world are made by glaciers. Yosemite's beautiful. If we go from Yosemite and we go to Glacier, it's beautiful. The glaciers did it. Okay, the ice shaved that off. This is Milford Sound in New Zealand. If you've got to go somewhere, New Zealand is really neat. And those cliffs are sort of Yosemite-sized, a mile high, and the glaciers did it. If you've been to Glacier Bay, we were up there with some alumni, actually, a few years ago. And could you back up one? I'm sorry. How does a whale jump that high? The water's deep. Why is the water deep? Because the glacier made fjords. You know, so the glacier did it. So I'm sorry, go ahead to the next one. If you go to Greenland now, what you find is the glaciers are melting back. The glacier was here 100 years ago. It's melting back to reveal a lake. Click the next one. What you see is that when the glaciers are gone in Glacier National Park, there's the lake. Okay, and then one more here. Pretty much every glacier on the planet that we've got data for has gotten smaller. The ones that are getting more snow have gotten smaller. Okay, and you can see where it's at. Not a huge change here, but you can see where the sucker sat right there. It's backing up a little bit. If we measure the glaciers of the world now, on the next slide, 1960 is on your left, 2005 is on your right. This is continuing. There were a few glaciers in Norway that grew for a bit before they went into shrinking a little. But if you look at all the glaciers, what are they doing? They're shrinking. You'll get people hugely excited about a year when they weren't shrinking, or you'll get people that wave at these and say, see, there's no warming, or you'll get people that wave at these and say, see, it's a disaster. But if you take them all together, what do you see? They're getting smaller. You watch, you sort of fuzz out the weather, and they're getting smaller. So if we click to the next one, we're going to try to do something here. I try to do a little bit of making these things more palatable. And I've never been sure if they're more palatable this way or not. But, okay, this was one. There's actually a beautiful video of this one that elder daughter Janet put together. But I'm going to try to see if I can figure this thing out. Oh, a snowflake out on a chilly night, over the ocean of blue and white. Southern Cross has a guiding light headed for South Polo. Polo, Polo, got a Southern Cross, a guiding light headed for South Polo. Over the albatross soaring through, penguins fly in the krill fleck blue. Got seals and skuas, great whales too, all playing round South Polo. Polo, Polo, seals, skuas, great whales too, playing round South Polo. One flake's a miracle, two a display, three and you might wreck your car today. To make a 2-mile pile and they're on their way, flowing from South Polo. Polo, Polo, got a 2-mile pile and they're on their way, flowing from South Polo. The Physics is simple, all piles spread. Water, matter, cats on a bed are continent wide 2-mile piles, no bed, spreading from South Pole. Polo, continent wide 2-mile piles, no bed, spreading from South Polo. Slow in the middle, thick and cold, down through the mountains, carved in old, picking up speed in the ice stream mold, don't fall in a crevasso, picking up speed, ice streams mold, don't fall in a crevasso. Ice streams at the sea don't make bergs right away. They flow across the ocean for many a day. There's a great ice shelf in a rock-bound bay with friction from the sides. Great ice shelf in a rock-bound bay, friction from the sides. If we raise CO2, warm the air and sea, melt the shelves away and let the pile spread free, it'll raise the ocean towards you and me, while it shrinks that 2-mile pilo. Raise the ocean towards you and me, shrink that 2-mile pilo. Oh, an Arctic fox on a chilly night, the edge of another ocean blue and white. If we melt their eyes, would that be right? Both poles are on the same Trello. If we melt their eyes, would that be right? Both poles on the same Trello. Oh, a snowflake out on a chilly night. Okay, so at any rate, we can have some fun with this. Now, I've been to Congress testifying twice in the last couple of months. I was down in May doing a big briefing on Capitol Hill. I have briefed White House officials on both sides of the aisle. I've gone to Greenland with 10% of the Senate from both sides of the aisle. Policy differences, how people view what I just did, have changed with time. But the reaction to science, have been consistent with time. There's always been sort of people say, given what you just said, what do we do about it? And there's divides across the aisle, don't kid anybody. But recently what we're happening is we're seeing the reaction to the science changing. And that's what I want to talk to you about a little bit, because our students do this, but so do the Capitol Hill. Now I'm going to do one that happened. I'm not going to tell you which party. I'm not going to tell you which committee. I don't want to make political points here. What I want to do is talk about teaching of science and how it does this. So we're down there. We're meeting with the staff after having talked to the congressional people. And a staff member, a high staff member, at a committee that deals with science. This is their job, is to deal with science. The staff member who has the Congress people's ear says, I didn't take science in school. I don't know science. I don't like science. But you scientists are wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. Okay? And then says, okay, I know that the basis for global warming is a hockey stick that's broken. Okay, now this is, the basis for global warming is physics. It's physics been known for more than a century. It's physics that was really worked out by the Air Force. And the Air Force was not doing global warming. They're communicating, they're operating, and in World War II they say, hey, we better understand the atmosphere and we understand how energy works in the atmosphere. And then they said, you know, the hot exhaust of that enemy bomber is a target for a heat-seeking missile. And I'm going to need a sensor that sees the heat of that. And if I make that sensor look in a wavelength where water vapor or CO2 are active, I can't see it because they're in the way. And they got a bunch of physicists who said, you know, CO2 and water vapor block some things. And they stop energy from moving around. And once they and the Navy and Ford and some scientists from academia said, you know, if it's blocking energy from a hot enemy bomber, it's blocking energy from the Earth too. That probably means something. And that's really the basis of global warming. Now, we click forward here a little bit. If you sit on a satellite and look down in one wavelength, you have the water vapor loop that you see on TV on the weather forecast. That's part of the greenhouse effect. If you look at another wavelength, right in here, this is the energy going to space seen by the satellite that is cooling the Earth off. And this is the energy that CO2 is blocking. It's blocking some other at other wavelengths as well. But it's observed fact. Now, in fact, there's two curves on here. And I'm going to walk you through them briefly. Click once. This is what CO2 is blocking that is not cooling the planet. And over a bit more than a decade, this is how much more is being blocked in the next slide. And if we raise CO2 more, this is how much more can be blocked in the next slide. And so click one more, there you go, okay? What it's blocking, how much more it's blocking, how much more it could block. It's not correlations, it's not hockey sticks, it's physics. Okay, so click the next one. Now, this staff member is sitting there telling me, you know, I didn't take science, I don't know science, I don't like science, but I'm going to tell you that you're basing global warming on a hockey stick. No, we're not. We're basing it on something that a satellite measures, okay? What actually happened is somebody who was going to argue against doing anything about global warming gave this person the story rather than getting it from the scientific community. Okay, now the hockey stick is in a way part of science, but it's very different than this story. So, so at any rate, now we find this with our students as well. If I come down and I say, okay, what do you think about energy? Yeah, I need coffee in the morning. Okay. But if I get them going, usually what I find is that they're interested in the policies. More coal, no nukes, more nukes. Ride a bicycle, stay away from my pickup truck. And what they think the science is very strongly correlated to what they actually believe about coal, nukes, and bicycles. And what is they know an immense amount of stuff that ain't so. Which is very interesting, okay, including this business about the hockey stick being the basis of global warming. Now, let me walk you through why this matters very briefly. If you got the chocolate croissant out there, you may be over your 2,400 calories for today. I'm sorry. But somebody cooked this croissant, and very few of you, how many, honest to goodness, how many of you spent all summer hoeing corn so you wouldn't starve this winter? Okay, very few of us actually have to hoe corn so that we don't starve this winter because there's a tractor plowing and your share, my share, each individual share of U.S. energy use is 240,000 calories a day. We have 100 serfs doing our bidding. Surf, plow for me. Surf, cook for me. Surf, truck for me. Surf, run me down Interstate 80 at 70 miles an hour. Okay, and we love it. 85% of it is fossil fuel. Okay? Now, we have tried lots of ways to get that energy. This is Penn's Woods. It's Pennsylvania. The first state forestry chief for Pennsylvania, a century and a little ago, was a professor from this university, Rothrock, and he referred to the Great Pennsylvania Desert because we cut basically every tree. Right? We're here ultimately because of the iron furnace. State College really is a suburb of Penn State because Penn State is a suburb of the iron furnace in some bizarre sense, and they cut all the trees. The elk we have now are imported from the Rockies. We chased out the bison. We had basically no deer in Pennsylvania because there were no trees. There's no Nittany lions, real, wild ones. Not primarily because of overhunting, primarily because there wasn't a tree they could do it behind. There was nothing to eat, It was truly amazing, and it's not just us, okay? Now, if you've ever tried to read by firelight, it's a little bit flickery, and so people did other things. They'd burn candles, which sort of stunk because they were animal fat, and the poor people used camphene, which was turpentine and alcohol, and it used to blow up and kill people. And the rich people burned whales. And at the peak of whale oil production back in the 1850s, there were 10,000 sailors on whaling ships going out to clean the ocean out of whales. In 100 years when they hit peak whale oil, the price of whale oil went up to $25 a gallon in modern money. $25 a gallon to see at night in your whale oil lamp. And of course, that's when we drilled the Drake well there. In 100 years of whaling from New England, a maximum of 10,000 men on sailing ships going out, they collected something vaguely like 1 day of modern oil imports. We're not going back to trees and we're not going back to whales, be very, very clear, okay? But when they finally drilled the Drake well, this is from 1861 in Vanity Fair. This is the grand ball of the whales in honor of the oil wells of Pennsylvania. Oil's well that ends well. The next one's even better. This is truly wonderful. This is a sheet music cover from 1864 of the American Petroleum Polka. And the lady here, beautiful Pennsylvania scene, the lady here in her dress. They made the oil white rather than black so it wouldn't mess up her dress. But, okay, this was a wonderful thing. Be very clear, when we could quit burning trees and whales and burn oil instead, it was a great thing. It really was. Okay? Now, we do a lot of it, right? If you fill up the car, it's about 100 pounds of gas. If you had to bring home all of those gallon jugs, it would be a different world, but of course you drive them home. When you burn it, you add oxygen, it makes CO2. It's about 300 pounds of CO2 per fill up per week. Okay? Now, imagine for me, if you moment, if you would, if our transportation system packaged its waste the way our transportation system used to package its waste. Okay? That's horse ploppies. Okay? It's a pound a mile. Okay? We know this. We know how much gas we buy. We know how many oil tankers, so on. 22 tons of CO2 per person per year in the US. My share in my life of that is going to be a bit more than 20,000 times what I weigh. 20,000 of me up there blocking radiation, okay? And this is measured. This is, we know what we're doing. There's no question about this, okay? So this effect of CO2 on our energy budget is physics, it's not politics. Bookkeeping shows you that we're changing CO2 that has to change the climate, okay? I can tell you for hours what this means for you, without ever telling you what to do about it. I can also tell you what to do about it if you want, but you shouldn't get that from me. I'm just a physical scientist. I shouldn't tell you what to do. But you know, to a lot of people, this sort of suggests maybe we should talk about what are the wise ways forward. Okay, and there's a bunch of big issues in addition to climate, right? The value of energy. If we stopped burning fossil fuels today, we'd be toast. You're all going to walk home? Come on. No, I'm not going to either. Okay, I drove over here. Jobs are a big issue. National security, climate change is on the list, but man, it's not the only one, right? So let me raise some interesting questions for you. I worked for an oil company one summer. Cindy and I had a ball. It's the one time I really felt rich. We used to go to all the movies. We were on a search for the best nachos in Dallas-Fort Worth. You know, it was wonderful. Oil companies make all kinds of great jobs. But they probably are a worse way for making jobs than any other way we could get our energy. Think about it for a minute. When Karen was in middle school, she did a History Day project. And she got us into the cab of a drag line on a strip mine over here by Windber. And there's one guy sitting there with a joystick. The dream of how many people. One guy with a joystick taking apart a mountainside. And yeah, somebody built the machine and somebody maintained it, and there's some people drilling some things and some pickup trucks out there. But one guy taking apart a mountainside. He's got a really good job, and he shared it with 3 other people. They took turns taking apart the mountainside to get the coal out that made the electricity that we're using right here. Okay? So that's not a huge number of jobs. Probably the cheapest oil producers in the world in the Middle East can put oil on a tanker for $5 a barrel. And that $5 a barrel has jobs attached, and some of them might be here, but some of them are over there. But we're giving them 80 right now. And that other 75 is profit. And it might go to jobs there, and it might go to buying companies, and it might go to buying racehorses, and it might go to terrorists, and it might go to a whole lot of places. But there's no jobs attached to the first payment. It's just rent for them having lived over oil. And if you took that same amount of money and spent it on nuclear plants or windmills or solar cells or anything here, there'd be jobs attached to it. So oil makes great jobs, don't kid anybody, and so does coal and so does natural gas. But the available scholarship says everything else makes more. Okay, now, national security, Korean War right afterwards, Harry Truman gets a committee, and the committee says, okay, don't become dependent on Middle Eastern oil, it's a national security risk. Harry Truman. Okay, Ike said, he said, let's do some solar, let's do some nukes, let's do some synthetic oil from oil shales in the U.S. We didn't do it. Okay, but it's interesting, a very long supply line the military doesn't like very much. They're working on renewable energy in Afghanistan because most of their casualties are on convoys, and half of the convoy is fuel. And if they can save energy at the front, it's people that don't get blown up. And it's really that simple. Okay, now click to the next one. Climate change, best estimates, is not the end of the world. We're not dead, but it's a few percent of the economy in a few decades. So that's a few $1 trillion a year of damages, with most estimates being that the fix would be sort of 1% of the economy per year in a few decades. And lots of other issues. Okay. We tax tobacco, and that raises money, and it sort of discourages smoking. And we tax alcohol, and that raises money, and it sort of discourages drinking. And we tax wages, and that raises money, and okay? Now, if you were to decide that you wanted to slow down global warming by taxing carbon, and you took that money and threw it away, it's terrible for the economy. And if you took that money and used it to build giant statues of me, it's not great for the economy. It depends on what you do with that money, but there was a recent study about a year ago said, suppose you took that money, you don't pay down the deficit, you don't do anything else with it, you don't grow the government, all you do is dollar for dollar you quit taxing work. And that particular one, the economy grows a little faster than it's growing now. Because it's true that taxing carbon really hurts a huge number of things because we use it everywhere, but we work more. And taxing work does, all the economists think, it says that, you know, if you don't get a lot of money for your work, you don't work as hard. Okay, so now, if I talk about the dangers of climate change, the damages and so on, there's uncertainties there. And don't kid anybody, it's real. This is science, it has uncertainties. And they're not as small as we'd like. But I'll virtually guarantee you that the uncertainties about what's the best way to jobs, best way to taxes, best way to national security are bigger than the uncertainties about climate change. Because we really, if we had an oil company representative here, I think they honestly could say, now wait a minute, did you consider everything in what you were just talking about there? Let's talk about this one because it's a little complicated. And you're going to change the economy growth and that's going to affect other things. These are big questions. And they're questions that matter to a whole lot of people who want to make a living and have a good life. But when I go to Congress, they want to argue about whether the Air Force knows how to make a sensor for a heat-seeking missile. And somewhere, this is a huge stinking failure in science education, that we have people who will say, I didn't take science, I don't like science, I don't know science, but I'm going to tell you that we're going to argue about science rather than about things that matter to people. And we failed. I don't know where or how, what I've done wrong, but I'm sorry, we've got things to do here. So click to the next one here. So a couple other points. Fossil fuels do run out. BP is not out in that deep water because they love throwing money away. Okay, they're out in deep water because that's where they could find the oil. We have walled off some oil that you can't get to because of environment, but not all that much. The stuff on the North Slope of Alaska, probably 2 years of U.S. imports. Take the 30 years or so to get it out. So yeah, there's more we could get if we dropped the environmental regulations, but not all that much, okay? If there's more fossil fuel than we think and we're not going to run out soon, then there's a real climate issue. And if there's less fossil fuel than we think, then there's a real energy issue, okay? So click forward here, but that area, get 10% of the sun, that runs the world. 10% of the sun on that area runs the world, okay? Or if you could put a wind farm on the windiest 20% of the deserts and plains, that runs the world. Now there's real issues. That's easy to say, that's hard to do. There's a lot of wires, there's a lot of batteries, there's a lot of interconnects, but are we doomed when the fossil fuels run out? No, of course not. It's just a matter of being smart. Frank Schumann of Philadelphia a century ago was making concentrated solar thermal in Philadelphia, and then he was pumping water out of the Nile to irrigate the crops in Egypt. It works, okay? So now, opinions? We're going to get out of here. We're going to quit very fast. Science is not infallible. We have errors. It is not revealed truth. We know. As a professor, I teach a lot of it is because I expect the students are going to run up my back and over me and go on to better things. They're going to find mistakes I made. And as a scientist, if the day I come in and say they're not going to find my mistakes, you should kick me out because I'm not doing science anymore. Okay, so but science is pretty good. That computer does work. It really is, okay? And opinion, it should have a seat at the table. And it shouldn't tell you what to do, but it should have and it would really be better if the congressional aides were not proud of not knowing science, if they're doing science, okay? Now, this probably starts a lot younger than our students at Penn State. They have some pretty strong opinions by the time they get here, but it's something we really have to do. We got to teach better. And we have to make this more understandable, more intuitive, and we have to be very careful to divorce it from the politics because it doesn't tell you how to vote and it doesn't tell you what to do. And so let me put in a word for science here now. If we were hunter-gatherers, the world would hold one, maybe a few million of us. It doesn't grow trees fast enough, it doesn't grow whales fast enough, it doesn't grow deer fast enough. Where if we all decided we're going to live on deer, it's going to be a really short deer season. We're headed for a few billion of us who read and write and build things, and so the numbers are fairly clear. If we didn't have our stuff and we didn't have our know-how, there's going to be 100,000 of us down there at the stadium here in a couple of hours. 100 or so of them would actually be alive without our stuff and our know-how. So when you walk in and you look at the crowd and there's 100,000 there, pick out 100 and say everybody else is here because we get along with each other, we build things, and we pass on our knowledge. 99, it's a little more than 100,000, but you got the idea, okay? Now, the best projections are that population's going to stable before we double it again. If you give people something to do, they choose not to have that many kids if they think their kids are going to survive. But there's a lot of learning, a lot of building, a lot of getting along to get that last bit of increase before we get to a stable world. Okay? So with that, I'm going to do one more song for you. I'm giving you a very strong warning. Be forewarned, the last line is partisan. Okay? So let me see what we can do here. Click to the next one if you would, Cindy. We did this project. I think I told you that we went to Tom Kiter and Joe Myers and Topher York's filming our students down at the bottom of the Grand Canyon and other places. So I'm going to show you pictures from that trip, and I'm going to try, if my voice holds long enough, to sing a little bit about how science is good and why we might want to use it, and then we'll finish this up, okay? Song about deep doo-doo. Not much fun, it's true. The choice is too clear. We can go wrong. Low, fight, starve, and die, or climb up high. Science, farm, engineer. The choice is here. Either smart or smack down. If I faced a chomping match, I'd be the catch for an alligator. If I raced a hungry jungle cat, I'd not win that. It's see you later. We're here because ancestors smart have played the part, outwitting others, and it gives pause. Our art sustains. We live by brains. Thanks, fathers, mothers. Don't ever ask them why. It's knowledge or else die. stand by to help the future. What you can hold in your mind's hard drive helps us survive, but it fills up fast to pass on more of what you know to help them grow. The written can last, hunt, gather, fight. 1 million souls would fill this world. Any more face starving, but farm build right. 10 million soon have reached the moon. Our future carving, how can we find an even better way with the billions here to stay? There's so much need today. How can we help them? We're a little bit behind here. I think, yes. Okay, one more then. Okay. First, learn from all. Each color creed has filled the need. Learn what they all know. Their shoulders tall will help you see. Discovery can quickly follow. Then you must know that what you learn predicts what happens next and deserves reliance. And so you know an honest public test will learn what's best. We call this science. You may hate lectures to tell you what to do and think I look like I've no clue, but there's really deep to do out there, it's true. His brains are bad things. Go win another Nindy Lions. Okay. So I want to thank you. We'll click to the last one there. I want to thank you for coming. Please keep in mind, if you're looking for interns, if you're looking for help anywhere, check your old department, check the college, check the Alumni Association. They'll get you in touch with somebody. There's a lot of students here who really do care a lot and they want to do good things. Stay in touch. We value what you do. The university does not run without you. You have wisdom, you've seen us, you know where we've been, you know where we're going. Coming back is a good thing for us. And so please stay in touch with us, and we really do mean that. Thanks for coming out and enjoy the game. Yes, we do have questions. We're fairly close to being on time even. It said 45 minutes. We're almost right on there. So, yes. Oh, yes, over to start here.
Okay, who's the guy from Philadelphia who did the solar stuff?
Philadelphia solar stuff is a guy named Frank Schumann. Frank Schumann, he was a glass guy. And if you go and find old newspapers, you know, so it's before electric lights. If you're building a train station, you've got a big skylight overhead so that you can let light in. It snows one winter day, the weight breaks the glass, and it falls on people and stabs them. And so Schumann is the guy that invented putting chicken wire in the glass so that it doesn't break. And then he said, you know, people are building these newfangled automobiles, and when the glass breaks, it's stabbing people. And he said, I can't put chicken wire in a windshield. So he put glue in a sandwich between the glass plates. And that way it was the first safety glass. And then he said, when I put glass over things, it gets hot inside. It's a greenhouse effect. And so he built this low pressure steam engine, and he started running steam out of glass boxes in Philadelphia, and he ran the steam engine. And then he said, wow, this works, but Philadelphia is not the sunniest place for doing this. And so then he went over to Egypt and he set up these collectors that look just like what they'd use now. And he's running this water pump to water the fields around Miati, Egypt. And then World War I breaks out and all his engineers went home to build bombs and the thing got torn apart. But it worked, and it worked 100 years ago, that there's economic concentrated solar power running. You know, this is not a new invention. It's, yeah, yes?
Without revealing your sources or becoming too political, do you predict it's going to get better or not better with the next Congress?
Do I predict it's going to get better or not better with the next Congress? I don't know. I really and truly don't know. My experience, okay, so I've had this wonderful good fortune to get to know some of our representatives, some of our senators when the camera is off, okay? And if you watched the last election cycle, you probably saw some things on TV that didn't make you really happy, okay? And every politician who stands for re-election knows that a year of what they've done, 2 years of what they've done are going to be distilled into one sound bite that is taken out of context to make them look bad. And I don't think they love it. That means that when they're on the record, if they make one mistake, if they make one slip, they will be beaten with it severely about the head and shoulders. So when they're on public, on the record, I think a lot of them go to the cue cards. They just say what they know they can say, because if they ad-lib something, there's a real danger that they're going to get in trouble. When the camera is off, my personal experience is that these are actually really smart people who want to do the right thing. And there's people that just look at me with their mouths open when I say that. They say, how is this possible? But my experience actually is that when the camera's off, these are really smart people that want to do the right thing. And so I'm hopeful that somehow this will bubble up through the unpleasantness that seems to surround campaigns these days. It may take a little help and it may take a little work, but we see things that aren't working and we like to trash people, and there's a huge number of jokes on the internet and TV and what have you about how bad our representatives are, but I'm just not convinced of that, because the ones I've talked to, there's talent there. There's things that can be done. I suspect the world works better if somehow we can make it easier for them to use that intelligence to push things forward, and I don't know quite how to do that. Like I say, I'm a geologist, but I keep hoping. So yes, yes.
Do you have any comments on these reports of methane gas seeping out under the ice in Siberia?
Right.
Ice over there.
Methane gas seeping out in Siberia. If you put a lot of organic material in a small place underwater, it runs out of oxygen, and when it runs out of oxygen, the worms and the crabs and the crayfish and the bacteria that use oxygen quit working, and you switch to ones that do other things, and eventually you get these methane-generating bacteria. That in turn is a greenhouse gas. It will go to CO2 after it's methane, and that's also a greenhouse gas. And probably we are increasing it some by warming, because there's a huge amount of frozen stuff up there, and when you make it warmer, you thaw it. Best guess, this is a slow amplifier and not huge. And there's actually work that was done here at Penn State. Peter Fleming, Xiaoling Liu worked on this earlier. There are safety valves. If you try to get an insane amount of methane together, you have to push the water out of the way, and if you push the water out of the way, you need to raise the pressure, and when the pressure raises, it opens a crack and the methane gets out. So what this means is that there's enough methane to matter, but there's not enough methane to control the world in all likelihood. We saw this, essentially, that's what was going on with the Deepwater Horizon. The methane was contributing to that blowout out and down in the Gulf. But that was enough to really matter to the people of the Gulf, but not enough to really change the whole climate of the world. So essentially, that would be the answer. Is this one's an amplifier? If the scientific estimates of the future are wrong, things would get a little more challenging rather than a little less challenging because of this feedback, but it's probably not a screaming Harry Panic conniption fit.
We're going to stop here for just a minute. We thank Dr. Alley hugely. Let him have a little glass of water. If you have to leave for the game, we understand. We're going to take a 5-minute intermission while our World Campus visitors who are in this room on the web will be sending in their questions. So we'll be back again right here for the in-house audience in 5 minutes, and we'll have some more questions. So
we're not disappearing, but...
So if you need to go to the game, you can disappear. If not, we'll be right here, and I'll get you something to drink.
Oh. And that's a positive.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And this gentleman in the brown sweater is going to have an in-room question.
Oh, okay,
when you
fine.
finish with your online question. So it's time to come back to class. If you're not rushing off to freeze at the football game.
Yep.
Kevin, are we ready? All righty.
Okay, so we've got questions that came in from the web, and then I think I'm supposed to interleave them with questions from you here, and you're going to yell at me. So we'll hit a couple of these if we can quickly here, and then we'll run some in-house here. So Clyde in Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. Hi, Clyde. How you doing? What's the important information that we should be teaching the next generation about the energy crisis? Thing one is it's soluble. There's absolutely no reason that we can't do this in any way, shape, or form. The amount of energy that is potentially available from wind, from sun, from geothermal, from nuclear is huge. And it's basically engineering ready now. We need a lot of engineers. There is an insane amount of money to be made. If you got 1% of the U.S. energy market, it is more than $10 billion a year. So if you want to say, where is there money to be made, this is certainly one place you can make money, because 1% of the U.S. energy market is more than $10 billion a year. So there's potential sales there. All right, so that I would start there. Steve in Virginia wants to know, how do you propose taxing CO2? Most taxes are on things that are easy to get at people's wages, buying gas, buying anything. CO2 is literally up in the air. I think the way people have suggested, if you were going to put a tax on CO2, you do it at the wellhead, at the mine, or at the tanker port. So you get it right when it comes out of the ground before it's burned. And in fact, those are a moderately small number of places. It is probably easier to tax CO2 than it is to tax sales, if you think about what's going on the internet with sales right now. If you were to try to capture all of the sales, including eBay and everything else, that's going to be way the heck harder than it is finding where the oil tanker's docking. So I think taxing CO2 is actually easier as a, the logistics of doing it are easier than keeping the sales tax working, because right now you buy it in a store that's staffed by Pennsylvania workers, and you pay a sales tax, and you buy it on the web, and you don't. And A, is that fair? And B, how are you ever going to capture that? So it potentially is easier. Mark wants to know, will fusion be the end-all solution, and how are we pursuing it? Fusion is one of these unknown unknowns. If it works, it's glorious and beautiful, but there's an old joke about fusion, which is it's the energy of the future, and it always will be, because it's been just around the corner for 50 years. If it comes, and it's very easy, there's wonderful, hideous statistics. If you look at how much research we've been doing on fusion or any energy, compared to other things that we do, we have not been trying very hard to do energy research in any way. And of the energy research we've been doing, it's mostly been fission, fusion, and fossil fuels. The renewables have actually been a very, very tiny piece of it. So we had a big surge with the oil embargoes in the 70s, and then we cut, federal research was cut, I think it was a third or something like that, and private research was cut sort of 90%. So we've not been trying very hard on this one. And then one more here I've got in hand, and then we'll go to in-house here. From Anthony in Ohio. Hi, Anthony in Ohio. Do you feel online Penn State World Campus students have a strong enough connection, enough interaction with their professors that they can get as excited and jazzed up about science as you say you can get your students in an on-campus class? Boy, I wish we're getting good feedback. and we're seeing some online students out there who actually really get excited. The question is getting the same level of commitment. And in the old days, a student on campus was really committed to campus, and a student off somewhere was probably working another job and didn't have time to get committed. Nowadays, if everybody's got a cell phone, you're all equally distracted, and so it's probable that this is doable. I think we can get to the point that a World Campus student will do as well, and be as excited potentially. But we just have to make sure we do it right, and this means work on our end. I know we're trying to do that. It also means getting feedback from the people out there as to what works and what doesn't. Okay, so that was the cards that came in off the web so far. So then I had a question here and then a question here. Yes?
Yeah, I was wondering, during your talk you said something about the population stabilizing and then maybe doubling. Aren't we already over the carrying capacity in most models?
Right, so the question is about population stabilization and carrying capacity of the planet. If you look at history, right, you go back and we took the students to Mesa Verde, and Mesa Verde is a fascinating place, and if you sit in Mesa Verde, you can look down at a place called Longhouse Valley, which is a little, just out of sight, but it's not very far away in Arizona. And if you go to Longhouse Valley, you can do how much it rained as a function of time from tree rings. They grow well when it rains there. And you can use archaeology to get the population of people that lived there. And what you find is just this remarkable thing. If you plot the curve of the history of how many people could live there from the rain and how many people did live there, it's the same curve over time, except when the really big drought hit at the end, the people left. So we know, if we look back through time, we know that people can fail miserably. We know there's been all these disasters of human civilizations that have gone down the tubes. And yet, if you look at the whole history of how many of us there are and how well we tend to live, it's gotten better with time. The carrying capacity, no one's agreed on the carrying capacity of the planet for hunter-gatherers. I gave a number of 1 to a few million. That's probably not too far off. But we've got to a few billion of us by applying technologies. And so it's clear that the carrying capacity of the planet is a very flexible number depending on how smart we are. And if you want to be a pessimist, you look at soil erosion, you look at groundwater depletion, you look at using up the phosphorus for the fertilizer, and you say, well, we're cooked. And if you want to be an optimist, you look at the fact there's more of us living better than ever before. You look at the fact that if we were to take sort of the highest crop yields and apply them to a reasonable fraction of our land, that we'd have way more food than we're using. And that I showed you the numbers. 20% of the plains and deserts of the world on a wind farm is all of human energy use. The deserts of Arizona would run the country and practically the world if we got 10% of the sunshine from them. And so it really is, carrying capacity, it really is a question of how smart we are and how well we can get along with each other. And so we are not past, I don't believe that we are past a carrying capacity if we're smart and we get along. And I believe we are grossly past a carrying capacity if we're stupid and we don't get along. So that's the simple version.
I taught Middle East history here at Penn State for 35 years, so I get extracurricularly. And one thing, first of all, sometimes I found that the students with their handheld computers are very, very helpful because they often can look up stuff for me while we're having a discussion about something like oil production in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, absolutely, and I do this too. I turn to the Cindy or the daughters. Yeah.
Second, I would really encourage brighter young people to go become congressional staffers for a few years, partly because they're the ones who really need the information to the congressman, good or bad, that they may have. And it's a matter of some concern to me because after all, they have to stand up to the lobbyists, or at least know what to say to the lobbyists when the lobbyists come calling. And third, I'd really like to hear more from you about what could be done with science education at the elementary, middle school, and secondary school level that would improve the preparation of students for college work.
Yeah, okay, so the second on the congressional interns, if you go visit a congressperson or a senator, what you find is it's just fascinating. There's about 2 old people our age. And more often than not, it's an old guy, but not always. And they've been there forever, and they've seen it all, and they are hardened, and they are. And then there's this flock of 24-year-olds who don't sleep, and they live it, and they are so dedicated, and they're so excited, and they're having so much fun, but they don't sleep. Okay, so you're absolutely right. In terms of science education for the younger people, I don't know what you do, because what we have now is some fraction of the people will tell their students at some point, I didn't take science, I don't like science, and I don't know science. And what the studies show very clearly is that if the teacher looks at the class and says, I don't like science, you lost them, because the teachers are so influential and they're so important. And somehow, I've actually toyed with the idea that maybe we should just quit teaching science for a while in elementary schools and just say, but teach it, you know? So say, okay, 15 minutes on recess, everybody's assigned, this is science class, even though we're going outside. Your assignment is to find something eating something and come back and tell me about it, okay? We did that, man. We'd have science. So somehow we've got to get to the point that there's a lot of people who didn't take science, and they didn't like science, but we have to find a way that they can enjoy it, and they won't say to their class, this is hard and it doesn't work. Because it isn't hard and it does work. And I think probably, you know, I don't know. I just don't quite know how to get there. I mean, our elder daughter is an elementary school teacher. So, you know, and she took calculus as a junior in high school and got an A. So, so there clearly are people here who can teach science really well, and she can teach it better than I can. But how do we get everyone to that level? We probably don't. And what we need to do is find a way for the people who aren't at that level that they can say to the kids, I may not be a science expert, but it is fun and it does work.
There are books for families that how to get your child interested in science, various kinds of gadgets make out of common household goods.
Right, but we got to make them accessible so that it'll fit into the elementary school. And if you go to an elementary school, and I've had the joy of doing this a few times, they're doing everything under the sun in the class, and we haven't done as well as we should at making things accessible to them that'll fit into the curriculum. Got one from Tennessee here, Mark in Tennessee. Hi, Mark. Do we not have an energy problem, but a growth problem? Okay, so if we weren't growing, we'd have energy. Eventually, it's an energy problem anyway, because 85% of the energy use is fossil fuels, and they will run out. So we have an energy problem. The question is just how soon is it a big energy problem? The growth problem issue, if everybody decided that we were going to shrink a little, we'd have less load on the planet. But it's really, really hard to do that. And, you know, would I even possibly entertain going to someone and saying, you can't have another kid? Boy, I'd have troubles doing that. You know, personally, I would. And the glorious thing is that what we've seen here and in many other countries is that if you do 2 things, you make sure that most parents have a reasonable confidence that the kids that they have will grow up. They're not going to die in childhood. And 2, everybody has a choice of interesting things to do. They can get educated, they can go to the game, they can get their cell phone, they can, if everyone has a choice of things that they can do, and everyone has a reasonable confidence that their kids will grow up, people choose to replace themselves. And some people don't, and other people do a little more, but people choose to replace themselves. If we can get to a world where we get those 2 things, everybody believes their kids will grow up and everybody believes that they can make choices about what they do, we've got it. And then it's not a growth problem, and then we just need the energy to get there. So that's what I think most people who think about this seriously are counting on, is that if you just have to make sure that when parents are having kids, they're not saying, I need 6 because the first 3 are going to die. And that's a big deal. And then you know, if there's nothing in your life, maybe, you know, so what do you do? Have another kid. Okay, so you need choices. So and those two things, everywhere it's happened on the planet, have gone to replacement rather than to growth.
Any last questions from the studio audience? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.